To read the skill file first before writing the story to check if any relevant skill applies. Actually, this is pure storytelling, content writing with no file creation needed. Let me proceed directly. Let me proceed directly. Let me pick fresh names not in the used list. The band names are Dorothy Callahan, Claire, Brandon, Renata, Margaret Oakes, Daniel, Natalie, Sandra, Evelyn, Lydia, Gerald, David, Harriet Calloway, Patrick, Kristen, Joyce, Ruth, Cecile, Marcus, Frank, Irene, Lorraine, Thomas, Faye. I'll use Beverly, narrator, 67, Amber, daughter, Corey, son-in-law, Phyllis, Beverly's sister, Nora, Beverly's friend. The first time my daughter looked at me like I was furniture, I told myself I was imagining things. That was 2 years before I finally understood I wasn't. My name is Beverly. I'm 67 years old. I live in Tucson, Arizona, and for most of my adult life, I believed that if you loved someone hard enough and long enough, they would find their way back to that love eventually. I believed that about my husband. God rest him. I believed it about difficult neighbors, about estranged cousins, about a sister I didn't speak to for 6 years over something so small I can't even remember now what it was. I believed it, most of all, about my daughter. Her name is Amber. She was born on a Tuesday in October. The sky outside the hospital window, the specific shade of blue that only exists in the desert in the fall. That deep, still blue that looks almost unreal. The nurses said she was the quietest baby on the floor. She came into the world without fuss, and I thought that meant something. I thought it meant she would be easy. I was wrong about that. But I loved her anyway. Through every hard year of it, the way you love the things that cost you the most. When my husband Walter passed, this was 4 years ago now, a heart attack, very sudden, the kind that doesn't give you time to say the things you should have said. I was 63 years old and alone in a house that had always felt too big, even when he was in it. We had lived in that house for 26 years. I knew every sound it made at night, every draft, every loose board on the back porch. But knowing a house is not the same as feeling at home in it, and after Walter, the silence had a different quality. It pressed. Amber called me the week after the funeral. She and her husband Corey had been living in Phoenix, 45 minutes from me, close enough to visit, but not so close that they showed up unannounced. She said, "Mum, you shouldn't be alone in that house." She said it with the kind of warmth that I now understand was the last of what she had left for me, though I didn't know it then. She said, "Come stay with us. We have the room. It makes sense." It did make sense. On paper, Corey worked in commercial real estate. Amber had left a job at the dental office the year before. She and Corey had decided she would manage the household, she said, which, at the time, I thought was a reasonable choice and none of my business. They had a 4-bedroom house in a nice part of Scottsdale. Guest room with its own bathroom, a backyard with a lemon tree. I remember the lemon tree specifically because I thought I could make lemonade. I could do something useful. I sold the Tucson house. Walter and I had bought it for $89,000 in 1998, and I sold it for $340,000. After everything, the realtor fees, the final bills, the small debts Walter had left that I hadn't known about, I cleared just over $260,000. I put it in my checking and savings accounts at my bank, the same bank I had used since I was 29 years old. I packed what I could fit in my sister Phyllis's truck, and I moved to Scottsdale. The first month was genuinely nice. I want to say that plainly, because I think sometimes when you're telling a story like this, you scrub away the good parts to make the bad parts make more sense. But the first month was nice. Amber and I cooked dinner together twice a week. I babysat their dog when they went out. I found a Bible study group at a church nearby, and I went on Thursday mornings, and I felt, cautiously, like I was building something. The shift was so gradual I kept explaining it away. It started with small things. Corey making a comment at dinner about how long I'd been in the bathroom that morning. Amber changing the channel when I sat down to watch something without asking. A tone in their voices when I mentioned Walter. Not unkind exactly, but clipped, like I was talking about something embarrassing. I told myself, they're young, they're busy, they have their own life. I'm the one who moved into their space. Be gracious, take up less room. So I took up less room. I stopped cooking as much. I stopped mentioning Walter. I started timing my showers and eating breakfast in my room some mornings so I wouldn't be in Corey's way before he left for work. I carried this small, careful politeness around the house like a tray of glasses, always balanced, always watching. And then one afternoon, I had been there maybe 5 months. Amber asked to borrow some money. She said it casually, the way you asked to borrow a pen. Mum, Corey's found an investment opportunity. It's really solid. We just need a little short-term bridge. Could you wire $20,000 to our joint account? You'll have it back in 6 weeks. $20,000. I said I'd think about it. I didn't sleep well that night. 20,000 felt like a lot. But she was my daughter, and I thought, what is money for, if not family? I transferred the money. 6 weeks came and went. When I asked about it, Amber said the timeline had shifted. These things take longer than expected. Corey was handling it. I said okay. I said I understood. 2 months after that, she asked again. This time it was 15,000. A different opportunity, she said. She said it the same casual way, standing in the kitchen, not quite looking at me. I hesitated, and I saw something cross her face. Not embarrassment, exactly. More like impatience. Like I was slowing things down. I gave her the 15,000. What I'm about to say is something I've thought about a lot since, and I want to say it honestly. I knew, somewhere underneath everything, that something was wrong. I knew the way you know you've left the stove on when you're already 20 minutes from home. A low-level certainty that you keep overriding because turning back is inconvenient. I kept overriding it because she was my daughter, because Corey shook my hand at Walter's funeral and said, we'll take care of her, because I had moved into their house and I was dependent on their goodwill in ways I hadn't fully mapped out yet, and that dependency had its own quiet gravity, pulling my judgment in a direction that was easier. Over the following year, I gave them money 7 more times, $43,000 in total, across those transfers for reasons that were always just vague enough to be plausible. An unexpected tax bill, a gap in Corey's commission before a deal closed, new tires for Amber's car when, somehow, they didn't have $800 between them. The money I cleared from Walter's house was sitting in my accounts, and they knew the number. I had mentioned it once, stupidly, early on. I have a cushion, at least. That's something. And I understood later that this was the moment the arithmetic changed. I was not a guest. I was a resource. The night I understood this fully was a Thursday in February, almost 2 years after I'd moved in. I had come home from Bible study to find Amber and Corey in the kitchen, and they were in the middle of an argument that stopped when I walked in. The silence that fell was the wrong kind. Not the silence of people who've paused out of courtesy, but the silence of people who were talking about you. Corey looked at me and said, Beverly, we actually need to have a conversation. He said they were looking at getting a new car, a lease on a BMW. Amber had wanted one for a while, he said. He said the monthly payment would be around $1,200 and that times were a little tight right now, and he wanted to talk about me contributing more to household expenses going forward. He said, contributing more, as though I were already contributing, as though my presence there was some kind of collaborative arrangement between equals. I was paying them $2,000 a month to stay in that guest room. We had agreed on that when I moved in. I paid it reliably every month. On the first, the way I had paid every bill in my life. I said, how much more are you thinking? He said another $1,000 a month would be fair. Amber was standing at the counter with her back to me, refilling her wine glass. She didn't turn around when he said it. $3,000 a month for a guest room in Scottsdale. I said I needed to think about it. I went to my room and I sat on the edge of my bed and I looked at my hands in my lap and I thought about Walter. I thought about how he used to say, Beverly, you have a bad habit of solving other people's problems with your own money. He had said it kindly. He was right. I called my sister Phyllis that night. Phyllis lives in Albuquerque. She is 2 years younger than me and considerably more direct. I told her the whole thing, everything, the transfers, the new ask. Amber's back turned at the counter. Phyllis was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Beverly, you need to talk to someone at your bank first thing tomorrow morning. I did not sleep that night. In the morning, I called my bank before Amber or Corey were awake. I spoke to a woman in their financial services department named, and I remember this because I wrote it down, a woman named Ms. Carver. I explained the situation without quite knowing how to explain it. She was patient. She walked me through everything. My accounts, the balances, the transaction history. She asked if I had given anyone else access to my accounts or set up any joint ownership. I said I didn't think so. She checked. Mrs. Rundyfink. Beverly, she said carefully. It looks like approximately 14 months ago. You signed a document at this branch adding your daughter as a secondary account holder on your primary checking account. I stopped breathing for a second. I had gone to the bank with Amber about 14 months ago. She had said it was for my convenience, in case something happened to me, in case I had a medical situation and couldn't access funds. She needed to be able to help. I had thought it was practical. I had signed without reading everything carefully. I was 65 years old and 3 months out from losing my husband, and I had not read carefully enough. She had the ability to withdraw from my checking account without my permission. I sat in the parking lot of the bank. I had gone in person after that first call, and I looked at the oleanders planted along the median, and I thought about how many times in the last year I had checked my balance and seen it lower than I expected, and told myself I had miscounted. I thought about Amber's new patio furniture. I thought about the weekend in Sedona she and Corey had taken in October, how she had mentioned it casually after the fact. The withdrawals went back 14 months. Small ones at first, 200 here, 300 there, then larger. The total, when Ms. Carver read it to me, was $19,460. I sat in my car for 40 minutes. I didn't cry. I'm not sure why. I think I had used up the crying reserve sometime in the 2 years previous, and what was left was something harder and quieter. Then I drove to a Target, bought a prepaid phone, and called Phyllis. Phyllis said, "Don't go home yet. Go get coffee. Let me make some calls." Phyllis had a friend from her church whose son was a family law attorney in Phoenix. His name was, well, I'll just call him my attorney because this is my story, not his. Phyllis got his number and I called him from the Target parking lot and he answered on the third ring and I talked for 20 minutes without stopping, all of it, start to finish. He said, Well, Beverly, what you're describing involves potential financial elder abuse under Arizona statute. What you do in the next 48 hours matters. Here's what I want you to do. He told me to go to the bank and remove my daughter's secondary access. He told me to open a new checking account at a different branch or different bank entirely and move my remaining funds. He told me to document every transfer, print every statement, save every text message. He told me not to confront my daughter yet. I did all of it that afternoon. New account at a credit union 2 miles from the Target. Every dollar moved. Secondary access revoked. Statements printed and in a folder in my car, not in the house. By 4 o'clock, I had done everything he told me to do, and I drove to a Panera and ate a bowl of soup I barely tasted. And then I called Phyllis again, and she said, "Come here. Come to Albuquerque." I said, "I can't just leave." She said, "Beverly, you're not leaving anything behind that belongs to you." I thought about that on the drive back to Amber's house that evening. I walked in, said hello, went to my room. I ate dinner with them, and Corey talked about a deal he was working, and Amber laughed at something on her phone, and I sat there and I thought, I raised this person. I bought her school clothes and helped her through a terrible breakup at 22 and drove her to the ER at 3 in the morning when she thought she was having an appendicitis attack, which turned out to be gas. I sat beside her hospital bed for 6 hours. I held her hand. Where was she now? I thought about a night when she was maybe 9 years old, and I had been sick with a bad flu, fever, and all of it, and Walter was out of town for work. Amber had made me toast. She had carried it in on a little wooden tray we had, very carefully, both hands, concentrating hard, and she had set it next to my bed and said, "Mom, I made it how you like it. Butter and a little cinnamon sugar." She was 9 years old, and she had stood there so proud of herself. I lay in the dark of the guest room and I let myself grieve that. I let myself grieve the child she had been, the mother I had tried to be, all the distance between then and now. I gave myself that one night. In the morning, I started planning. I did not leave in a rush. I want to be clear about that, because I think there is a version of this story where the woman packs a bag in the night and flees, and it's very dramatic. That's not what happened. I spent 3 weeks quietly removing my things, a few items at a time, things I cared about, putting them in the back of my car and driving them to a storage unit I'd rented. Photographs, Walter's watch, my mother's china, the books I'd had since I was in my 30s. I took my time. My attorney had sent a certified letter to Amber's address, my address technically, which I had never been on the lease for, notifying her that her secondary access to my accounts had been revoked and that I was disputing the unauthorized withdrawals. I was not in the room when it arrived. I found out from Phyllis, who had spoken to my attorney, that it arrived on a Wednesday. Amber called me that afternoon. I was in the storage unit, wrapping my mother's serving bowl in newspaper. I looked at her name on the screen and I thought about 9-year-old Amber with the toast on the tray. Then I let it go to voicemail. She called 4 more times. Then Corey called twice. Then Amber again. I listened to the voicemails that evening. The first one was confused. "Mum, I got some letter from an attorney. What is going on? Call me." The second was defensive. "I don't know what you think happened, but this is a misunderstanding." The third was the one that told me everything I needed to know. Her voice had shifted completely, all the warmth gone, and she said, "I cannot believe you went behind my back like this after everything we've done for you. We let you live in our home. We took you in when you had nowhere else to go. Nowhere else to go. Nowhere else to go. I had come to them with $250,000 and a broken heart and a genuine desire to be close to my daughter in the years I had left, and that was nowhere else to go." I did not call her back. I told my attorney I was ready to move forward with disputing the withdrawals. He filed the paperwork. In Arizona, financial elder abuse is a serious matter, and the documentation was clear. Withdrawals from my account, made without my direction, that I had not consented to and did not benefit from. The bank's fraud department opened an investigation. I will not say how that resolved because it is still in process, but I will say I expect to recover most of what was taken. I drove to Albuquerque on a Tuesday. Phyllis had a spare room. It has yellow curtains, which sounds like a small thing but is not a small thing when you have spent 2 years in a beige guest room that never quite felt like it was yours. She had put a vase of grocery store flowers on the dresser. I stood in the doorway and I could not say anything for a moment. She said, "The bathroom is yours until 9, then I need it." Phyllis has always known when not to make things bigger than they need to be. I have been here 6 months now. I found a book club, 4 women about my age who meet at the library on the second Monday of the month. I started walking in the mornings. There is a park nearby with a path along a dry wash, and in the early morning you can see roadrunners if you're quiet. I planted tomatoes in Phyllis's backyard in March, and they came in beautifully, and we ate them all summer, sliced with salt and olive oil, the way our mother used to make. I think about Amber. I won't pretend I don't. I think about her the way you think about a place you used to live, with familiarity, with a kind of distant grief, but without the pull to go back. She is my daughter, and I love her in the way that doesn't quite turn off no matter what, the way you can't fully stop loving someone whose voice you heard before they had words. But love is not the same as trust. Love is not the same as access. And I have learned at 67 that being someone's mother does not obligate me to be their resource, their safety net, their financial reserve against consequences they created themselves. The phone I use now is the same prepaid one I bought at Target that afternoon. I got a proper plan eventually, ported my number over, but I kept the same phone. I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe it's because it reminds me of the afternoon I sat in a parking lot and decided to stop overriding what I knew was true. My attorney tells me to be patient. I am patient. I have been patient my whole life, with a difficult husband, with a difficult daughter, with a grief that arrived without warning and a dependency I walked into without seeing clearly. I know how to wait. What I don't do anymore is wait for other people to decide what I deserve. Walter used to say I had a bad habit of solving other people's problems with my own money. He was right. But here is what I know now that I didn't know then. The money was never really the point. The money was just the clearest proof of what I had been doing my whole life, which was shrinking to fit the space other people left for me, taking up less room, timing my showers, eating breakfast alone. I don't do that anymore either. I have a window in Phyllis's spare room that looks out over the neighbor's cottonwood tree, and in the early morning, when the light is coming in sideways and the house is still quiet, I sit with my coffee and I think about nothing in particular. Not Amber, not Walter, not the money. I just sit there, in the light, in the quiet, in a room that has yellow curtains and a vase of grocery store flowers, and I think, I am exactly where I am supposed to be. It only took me 67 years to find out where that was. But I found it. People ask me sometimes, not often, but sometimes, whether I regret how things ended with my daughter. And I have to sit with that question for a minute before I answer, because the honest answer is complicated. What I regret is the year I spent explaining things away. The $19,000 that left my account in small pieces while I told myself I had miscounted. The $43,000 I handed over willingly, one transfer at a time, because I confused love with obligation and loyalty with silence. That part I regret, not because of the money. Money is recoverable, it turns out, at least in part, but because every time I overrode what I knew to be true, I was teaching myself that my own judgment was worth less than keeping the peace. That's the thing nobody tells you about being taken advantage of by someone you love. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens in small decisions, each one reasonable sounding on its own, until one day you're sitting in a bank parking lot looking at a transaction history that tells a story you didn't want to believe, and you realize the person who let this go on this long was partly you. I don't say that to be hard on myself. I say it because it's the most useful thing I learned from all of this. What Amber did was wrong. What Corey enabled was wrong. The withdrawals, the pressure, the manufactured dependency, the calculated use of a mother's grief and a widow's loneliness, all of it was wrong, and the law agrees, which is why there is still an open investigation and why I expect to recover most of what was taken. Actions have consequences that catch up eventually, not because of some invisible force keeping score, but because patterns of behavior leave evidence, and evidence has a way of surfacing. Amber and Corey built their arrangement on the assumption that I would never look too closely. They were wrong about that. They had mistaken my patience for blindness and my love for unlimited tolerance. The truer lesson, the one I carry around now like something in my coat pocket, small and solid and always there, is about what I owe myself. I spent 67 years being useful to other people, useful to Walter, useful to Amber, useful to whoever needed something handled or softened or paid for. And usefulness is not a bad thing, it is genuinely not. But I had confused being useful with being worthy, as if my value to the people around me was something I had to keep earning, keep proving, keep funding. Phyllis didn't rescue me. I want to be clear about that. She gave me a phone number and a room with yellow curtains and the kind of steady company that doesn't require you to perform gratitude, but the decisions were mine. The drive to the bank was mine. The folder of printed statements was mine. The silence on the phone when Amber called was mine. Each one of those was a choice to trust what I knew over what was convenient to believe. And that is the only kind of courage I have ever really understood. Not the dramatic kind, but the quiet, inconvenient, persistently ordinary kind. I think about what I want the rest of my life to look like, and the answer is not complicated. Tomatoes in the garden, a book club on Monday nights, coffee in the morning light, with no one else's anxiety filling the room, a phone I pick up when I want to and put down when I don't. I found it at 67. It is not too late to find it at any age.